بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تعالى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome first and foremost to our panelists, panelists, and also for the great audience that we have of individuals from all over the world. I think from what our admin team is telling us, we've got individuals from the east to the west of the world, alhamdulillah, who have come to hear about this great science of Unani medicine, inshallah. So today we have this great opportunity, bi-iznillahi ta'ala, that we have some special individuals here who have come from different parts of the world, in the sense that they're here to tell us about a field of Unani medicine that they have in-depth understanding and experience of. So what I'm going to do is, initially, I'm just going to do a brief introduction. I'm just going to give the backgrounds of each of our panelists. And then what I will do is I will then start off with some introductory questions. And whilst I'm doing that, by all means, I'm referring to the audience that we have here, do ask questions, use the Q&A. You can also use the chat, but ideally if you use a Q&A, you've got an admin team on board who will be filtering some of those questions, and then inshallah we'll have the opportunity to ask our esteemed panelists some of these questions. Now, first of all, let me begin by mentioning our honorable panelist, Professor Syed Shakir Jamil, who clearly is someone who is part of the School of Unani Medicine in Jamia Hamdard, and former DG CCRUM. Maybe you can explain to us maybe later on what that means. But generally speaking, he's had a considerable number of years of experience in the academic field of Unani practice. In fact, 40 years. And that's quite that's a lifetime, half a lifetime for many of us, in experience in the academic field of Unani practice. So somebody with a lot of experience, and he has been working on various projects, and this is an interesting area. He's been working on various projects related to Unani medicine with the World Health Organization, with WHO. So it'll be very interesting for us to hear a lot about that later on, inshallah. So we will question him on that, and we'll learn quite a bit from that, inshallah. Our next panelist is Professor Kunwar Mohammad Yusuf Amin, and he has a specialist interest. He's a medical pharmacologist, so he has an MBBS, MD in pharmacology, and at the same time he's a professor of modern pharmacology and research methods in the Faculty of Unani Medicine of 𝐁𝐚𝐥𝐸 Muslim University, the famous 𝐁𝐚𝐥𝐸 Muslim University, and he is the MD of Unani students for the last 28 years, sorry. So he's been teaching Unani medicine to students in this field for over nearly 3 decades. Okay, and he has supervised experimental and clinical pharmacological research on Unani drugs in more than 50 MD Unani areas, and he's also got a PhD in postdoctoral projects in various universities, and he's also the editor of Unani Medicus, which is an international journal on Unani medicine, and his area of research are mainly experimental and clinical pharmacology of Unani drugs, and also the philosophy, mashallah, of Unani medicine. So that'll be interesting for us to learn a bit about the philosophy on Unani medicine as well. So, so we have somebody with great experience of teaching and academia, and somebody who's already, also an editor of the Unani Medicus, which is an international journal. And then our final panelist is Dr. Iftekhar Ahmad Saifi, who has a bachelor's degree in Unani medicine and surgery from India, but he's also a doctor of naturopathy from the USA, and he's practiced naturopathic medicine in a center of repute for health and wellness in the heart of Hollywood for over 9 years. And he presently resides and settled in Dubai, in UAE, where he practices this exceptional science. So Dr. Saifi strongly believes in the connection between mind, body, and spirit. So we'll hear a bit about that as well later on, inshallah. I think the whole science is based around this, isn't it? But generally speaking, he has a multidisciplinary educational and practical background and an approach to this science of naturopathic medicine. And he brings a unique personal approach to health and healing, combining herbal medicine, nutrient therapy, and physical medicine. So hijama, cupping, and all these other sort of practices become a very important part of his practice as well, inshallah. So we want to again thank our great esteemed panelists, with such vast experiences that we can learn from. So this is an opportunity. Like I said, if any of you want to ask questions, please post your questions. And I will first start off with some introductory questions with some of our guests. So I'm going to start first with Professor Syed Shakir Jamil. And my first question to you is regarding Unani medicine. Now, we recognize Unani medicine. We've heard about Unani medicine. For most of us are quite familiar with this science. Now, with all kind of sciences, over time, they tend to grow. So has Unani medicine been growing? Is it a growing field, with increases? So we recognize that there's a lot of technologies that have risen in the sort of medical world. Is this a growing field of medicine that's engaging with some of that technology? Is it growing as a result of this? And clearly somebody who's had 40 years of experience and practice, in your 40 years, have you seen the science grow, or has it been something that is quite stable in the sense that its philosophy is such that it sort of presents medical sort of interventions in a certain way?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm very much thankful to you, thankful to the Balagh Academy who provide me this opportunity. And I'm also thankful to Sheikh Rafaqat Rashid who has introduced me. As far as the question is concerned, whether the Unani medicine is growing, as such, the answer is yes. Unani medicine is growing. Further, Unani medicine is more relevant, particularly in this era, because the fundamentals of Unani medicine very much support the holistic approach of the Unani medicine that is very much needed nowadays, particularly in this COVID-19 infection, because in general, as such, till now, there is no curative treatment as such, but the treatment is 4 levels, either at the level of when the person has not been infected, to prevent the population, to prevent the individual from the infection, number 1. At second level, then he has been infected, but he has no symptoms. At 3rd level, when he has mild symptoms, and at 4th level, when he has severe acute complications. What I mean to say that Unani medicine, particularly its immunomodulatory approach, its holistic approach, is relevant at all these levels, all these stages. If you want to prevent yourself, use Unani medicine. If you want to treat yourself with mild symptoms, use Unani medicine. And if the patient is being treated in a hospital where patient is having, for example, ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, Unani medicine at that time, I do not mean that only Unani medicine can manage the pathological condition. But what I mean to say, that simultaneously Unani medicine can be given to those type of patients who are very acute, who are having very much symptoms. If these, we are, alhamdulillah, in day-to-day practice, we are also using this type of patient. That patient is being given the modern medicine treatment at 3rd level, and patient is being given modern medicine in 4th level treatment. Unani medicine, it simultaneously can be given to improve the immune status, to prevent the further complications, and also to prevent the disabilities. This is one part of the answer. As far this is only, that's why I hope I say that Unani medicine is growing, and I say that Unani medicine is very much relevant, particularly in these type of days.
Okay, so in essence, what you're saying is that Unani medicine is something which is complementary. So it's not sort of denying.
Not in all the cases complementary. That may be curative, but may be complementary in all the cases. Okay. Not always complementary. Sometimes it may be curative as itself, and in some cases it may be complementary both.
And complementary therapy can be curative as well. Yeah. So in that sense, so part of my question was in terms of, just like medicine is growing with the technology, so that we're having new technologies. Have you seen that the practice of Unani medicine has evolved? Has that changed from, let's say, from 40 years ago until what you see it being practiced today?
Now the second part of the question, whether the technology is being used or the Unani medicine being grown with the technology, that I am saying. And again, now I want to add in my introduction that you have given. I am very much thankful for that. But I am DG means Director General.
Okay.
CCRU means Central Council of Research in Unani Medicine, Ministry of Health, Government of India. Right. I have been Director General of Research for 5 years. Right. I have also involved in the research in my as a teacher, as an academician in my Jamia Hamdard. But I have been 5 years. Almost 5 years as Director General Research, Government of India. Because your your question is related with the technology, that's why I need to add this aspect in my introduction. Okay. As far as the technology is concerned, Unani medicine is just different between the practice before 50 years. That was simply Nabbazi and clinical history of the patient. But nowadays, in Unani medicine, we use all technological support, but at the same time, we have also we have to maintain the specialty of the Unani medicine, that all those methods which are being by our great physicians, for example, seeing the nerves, for example, seeing the karura means urine, for example, seeing the baras, that is stools. We have also to continue. We have not to discontinue, but at the same time, as far as the diagnosis is concerned, we use all the technology, number one. Okay. Secondly, second line, as far as in the treatment is concerned, there are so many things where Unani physicians have to adopt the technology, generally known as the modern medicine technology, because the technology is a technology anybody can use. For example, very crude example, the Unani physician can also travel with a car, and modern medicine doctor can travel with a car. Similarly, the technological support in diagnosis is being used nowadays, and now practice is a little different between the practice of the 50 years and now. At same time, we are also using the technology in treatment also.
Okay. Okay. So clearly there is that engagement with advancements in technology as well. Alhamdulillah. That's good to hear. Okay, so let's just move on to our next panelist. I think Professor Yusuf, Amin, we've lost you on the camera. Okay, you're with us. So to Professor Amin, a question I suppose is regarding in conventional medicine. So this is the medicine that I've practiced, which is conventional. I'm a medical practitioner. We're very sort of accustomed to evidence-based medicine. And it's always been drilled into our heads that everything has to be evidence-based, which clearly requires us to follow certain processes, in terms of how we design our clinical trials and various other things. Now, do we have something of this nature in Unani medicine, or is this something that is quite different to what we practice in Unani medicine? Do we do different kind of research in Unani medicine relative to just evidence-based type clinical trials? Especially because I know your field is pharmacology, especially in related to pharmacology. How would you elaborate on that, on the topic of how evidence-based links in with Unani medicine practice?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It's indeed a great opportunity for me to participate in this webinar. Basically, Unani medicine is evidence-based. And for this, I'll refer to a 500-year-old book, Nafisi, which is on the Kulliyat. So in that book, it is mentioned that the physician diagnoses a disease in terms of the general imbalance, such as increase of heat. And then the physician selects a drug which increases the cold. But a drug which increases the cold may not work in that particular disease. So there are a number of diseases which can be classified as hot, and there are a number of drugs which can be classified as cold. But it is not definite, it is not certain that each cold drug should work in every hot disease. So a cold drug has to be hypothesized for a hot disease, and then it has to be empirically tested. It has to be administered and it has to be empirically tested whether it works or not. If it doesn't, then another cold drug has to be thought out, and then that has to be administered and it has to be observed by clinical research whether it's working or not. So in this sense, Unani medicine is clearly evidence-based. And however, the hypothesization is done on the basis of principles which are philosophic, which have not been derived by empirical study, but which are philosophic, such as the world being made of 4 elements and all living things being made of 4 humors, and each humor and each element being described by 2 qualities, hot, cold, and dry and wet, and each object of the universe also defined by these 4 qualities. So these are philosophic principles. So Unani medicine, in a sense, is a mixture of philosophic and scientific method. The basic hypothesization is done on the basis of philosophic principles, but that hypothesis has to be empirically tested.
Generally, from what I'm picking up from what Professor Amin is saying, that I suppose one way we look at science in a field is that there are certain philosophies. I mean, even with modern day practice of conventional medicine, there are certain philosophies that we follow in coming to a general process of activities and how we decide. So empirical evidence base is the harbinger of conventional medicine. So everything is empirically studied. But when we're looking at Unani medicine, then we're really looking at a different kind of philosophy, which clearly doesn't necessarily require us to go through the empirical process to judge whether a form of treatment is of benefit. So, so that's a quite important point to make, I suppose.
Yeah.
May
I intervene over here? Excuse me.
Yes, yeah, Professor Amin, yeah.
Actually, I thought that I had lost you. That's why I just stopped. And
Okay.
I'd like to complete my submission.
Go ahead.
However, as far as the principles are concerned, hot, cold, and dry and wet, everything, including humans and environmental objects and drugs, all of them being defined by these 4 qualities, as far as that is concerned, that is a philosophic principle. But a particular object X, whether it is hot or cold, that also is determined on the empirical basis. In Al-Qanun, Ibn Sina clearly lays down the methods in the 2nd book, Kitab al-Mufridat. He lays down the methods for defining whether a particular object is hot or cold or dry or wet, whether a disease is so, whether a drug is so. So there also empiricism again comes in. So this is how the philosophic and the scientific methods are blended in Unani medicine. Now, finally, I would say one more point, that in Unani medicine, it is basically clinical study, which is used for empirical confirmation. But there is animal study also is proposed. In the 5th book, in the 5th or 4th book of Al-Qanun, which is on Murakkabat, that is multi-drug formulations, Ibn Sina clearly talks of using animals. There he's describing antidotes, tiryaq, and in defining the activity of tiryaq, he says that we can use wild hen and we can get it stung by a scorpion, and so it will become very hot, and then we can give a tiryaq and see whether it protects the life of this wild hen or not. But having said that, mainly it is the clinical study which is used for empirical confirmation, but in a subsidiary level, even the animal studies it has been there in Unani medicines throughout its history, including the famous book Al-Qanun, which was, as all of us know, it was written 1,000 years ago. So that's all.
Okay, so Professor Amin, we'll have plenty of opportunity. Dr. Jamil, we'll come to you in a second, Dr. Jamil. But Professor Amin, we'll have plenty of opportunity for us to hear more about this in your sessions when you deliver them as part of our Unani Medicine course. Professor Jamil, did you want to say something quite briefly?
I want only add one thing.
Yeah.
I am fully agree with Professor Yousuf Amin Saab that Unani medicine is evidence-based. I want to add only this thing, that nowadays, what references have been given by Professor Yousuf Amin Saab, at present, in our research, we are also creating further evidence, or we are validating further, revalidating of this information which has been referred and which has been available in our classical Arabic and Persian literature. Now in research, we are conducting clinical studies, clinical trials, preclinical studies, animal studies. At present, we are creating on modern clinical parameters, on modern scientific parameters to further validate this information that has already been mentioned in our classical literature. Now we are doing this on modern clinical parameters.
Okay, going back to my example I gave about empirical evidence base, what we're really looking at is, it really depends on what you're looking for. So I suppose empirical studies can clearly elaborate on outcomes. So it depends on what kind of outcome you're looking for. So if you're looking at the sort of conventional medicine, which is more reductionist and physicalist approach to medicine, it's about, you know, looking at sort of changes in your electrolytes and things like that, and also the pathology of the liver, and, you know, on a microscopic level. And then we sort of react to that. But rather, what we're looking at Unani medicine, which is much more holistic, and it encompasses a lot more larger field. And hence, even though there is empirical studies there, they relate to different types of outcomes, I suppose. Maybe Dr. Saifi can elaborate more so for us. If I was to ask you the question of naturopathic medicine, how is this different to the modern sort of conventional medicine as we see it today? So Dr. Saifi?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan for giving me the opportunity to be in this panel discussing about Unani system of medicine and naturopathic medicine. Well, I'm a product of Unani medicine, and I dream in Unani system of medicine, although I studied naturopathic medicine. I believe naturopathic medicine, or let me call it Western naturopathic medicine, is just a derivative of Unani system of medicine.
Okay.
Because until like 150 years back or so, there was nothing except Unani medicine worldwide. Globally, you can say there was some system of medicine in India, China, Chinese medicine existed, but what was flourishing globally was Unani system of medicine. And just 150 years back or 200 years back, what was taught in European medical colleges were the books of Ibn Sina and Razi. You know, canon of medicine was the major work, and he wrote Ibn Sina, or presently called as Avicenna. He wrote about 270 books on medication, which is huge. And if you see in a WHO dictionary, he's called Prince of Physicians. You know, so whatever we saw at that time was just Unani system of medicine. And when I did my ND, Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine in USA, it was easier for me to grab what was taught there comparing other students. Reason was because I already studied a lot of herbs, a lot of European herbs, because what we study in Unani system of medicine is basically the herbs which were in Yunnan and Arabic region, and Yunnan is a part of Europe, of course. So I believe naturopathic medicine is not a separate entity; it's just a part of Unani system of medicine. And the philosophy is almost same, that we do not treat the symptoms, we treat the cause of the problem. So the holistic approach, as Professor Shakir Jamil mentioned in detail. So we look at the cause of the problem and then try to treat that. Unlike the modern system of medicine, or so-called conventional system of medicine, is after the symptoms. Now, I think, Unani system of medicine has to offer much more than simple Western naturopathic medicine. The reason is because Unani system of medicine has a philosophy. It is much deeper in just nailing out the problem, that the person may have like humors, and he can have one mizaj out of 4 mizaj, and then we can use herbs, or we can use food of the opposite mizaj to treat one mizaj condition, which is more maybe dominant at this point of time. So I think it has, it runs up, around a deep philosophy. Whereas naturopathic medicine is, in one way, it's kind of symptomatic medicine. For example, if a person comes with a condition, we just prescribe one herb without going deeper into the mizaj of the person. We just say, okay, you have diarrhea, just take this particular herb. You have headache, take this particular herb, or take this particular nutrient medicine. So I believe, Unani system medicine is much more, deeper. However, we can get a lot of things from naturopathic medicine and can assimilate in today's Unani system of medicine, because what I see, Unani system of medicine always evolved. It was, as Professor Shakir Jamil Sahab and Professor Yousuf Amin Sahab respectfully said, that there's a lot of work is going on right now. So it's not same as it was before 40 years.
Yeah.
So, it always evolved. So as the advantage of naturopathic medicine is, it is being, practiced mostly in Western world. And mashallah, there are a lot of studies and researches are being done on herbs and nutrients. And nutrients and herbs are always a part of Unani system medicine. So this is not, these are not two things, but naturopathic medicine is a part of Unani medicine.
So Dr. Saifi, you're somebody who's practiced in Hollywood and you've also practiced in Dubai. Is there a difference in the kind of clients you're getting? Is it the demand, the approach with the different cultures, also in terms of faith? So do you get more Muslims, for example, or do you get people from different faiths? Do you get different cultures? What kind of experiences do you have regarding that?
Well, as now traditional complementary and alternative medicine, whatever you want to call it, the demand is growing globally. So it was highly in demand in USA, right, in Western world. Mm-hmm. Likewise in Arabic, this part of the world, Dubai or UAE, mashallah. In USA, the patients were, we can say, more kind of educated patients. So they were opening the books before they would see you. They were just browsing the internet. They would just do their homework before. So they were learned patients. So, we had to really be very smart in dealing with them, because they knew like 70% already. And the good thing about those patients was that, mashallah, they were ready to follow whatever you wanted to tell them. And they were not hesitant in taking powders and raw herbs. Rather, they were more interested in taking these things in the crude and raw and pure form than in capsules. Even though these days a lot of herbal pharmacies have evolved, and a lot of nutrition companies, they're taking into it. But many of them, particularly I'm talking about the Hollywood people, they were into the purest form of herbs. They wanted just to soak the herbs at night and maybe boil them. So they were mentally prepared for these things. And if I was putting them on detoxification, they were ready for that, whatever. I was trying them, every way, and they said, we are ready to do it. Like now in Dubai, mashallah, because culturally, Arabic people, or this people from this part of the world, they are prepared for natural modalities. So they tend religiously and culturally towards herbs and natural treatment. So I believe UAE is the first country in Middle East, out of Middle Eastern countries, to start regularizing and practicing Unani system of medicine. Not just Unani system of medicine, actually Ministry of Health here, they have a separate department to regulate TCAM, traditional, complementary, and alternative medicine. And they have regulation for Unani system of medicine, for naturopathic medicine, for Ayurveda, and they have for traditional Chinese medicine, they have separate regulation for cupping therapy. So mashallah, they are quite open for these things. And as far as Muslims are concerned in particular, I think they feel more acquainted, they feel more comfortable with Unani system of medicine.
Yeah.
Just because of the way the herbs are prepared. For example, honey is the base of a lot of Unani preparations as opposed to other things. So, and hijama is a part of Unani system of medicine, other manipulative therapies. So they're already into it. For example, hijama. Now hijama is being talked about much because of the internet, etc. But what we see here in this part of the world, hijama was in their tradition forever. Since 1400 plus years, they are doing hijama. It's in family. You know, even a child of younger age comes, he says, "Yeah, do my hijama," as opposed to a person from India, he's a little hesitant to do hijama because he has just recently heard about it.
Okay, Dr. Saifi, thank you for that. So you described some of the similarities as well as some of the contrasting things between how medicine's practiced conventionally as well as through Unani medicine and naturopathic medicine. Just to get a bit more of an insight in terms of looking at Unani medicine, probably more on a global level, I'm going to ask Professor Jamil to just give us a bit of insight, because you're involved with quite a few projects, aren't you, with WHO, and how this is contributing to World Health. So can you just give us a bit of an idea about some of the projects that you're involved with WHO?
Thank you. As far as the WHO is concerned, I have been given 3 literary projects on Unani medicine. The first was drafting of the benchmarks of practice in Unani medicine. Benchmarks of practice in Unani medicine. The purpose of this project was that the benchmarks or standards of practice in globally in all the countries there should be a uniformity in practice. The objective and purpose of this to create to create safety in the practice, to increase the quality in the practice. The purpose of these benchmarks, number 1 is to maintain the equality in the practice. Second, to create the broader guidelines, not only for the practice, but also for regulatory issues. How a member state of the WHO can evolve the bylaws in the light of these regulatory issues. So we have given the broader guidelines for the regulation also. And thirdly, what should be the infrastructure of a Unani clinic, or what should be the infrastructure of a Unani hospital, a basic level and at advanced level. So we create these differences. So this was the one project, what should be the benchmark, what should be the standards of practice at basic level, primary level and at advanced level, what should be the guidelines for regulatory issues, and what should be guidelines of infrastructure should be available. Second project was the benchmark of the training. In this project, already there was a project was existing. Dr. Saifi was the part of that project in some 2009, but that document was revised and the initial draft was prepared by me. And purpose of this document was to create the broader guidelines for the qualification of the Unani doctors, Unani practitioners, qualifications of the practical qualifications, and same level of the degrees of internationally. So that guidelines can be used by the different member states.
Okay.
Third document that was very important, and I want your attention, please. That was the documents of the terminology of Unani medicine. Unani medicine has a global background. Unani medicine started from the Babul, then Yunan and Arabs has taken it up and propagated and translated the Unani documents, and then Unani medicine came to Europe and Central Asian countries, then Persia, then India. So keeping in view this global character, there may be some difference in terminology. Professor Yousuf has just used various terminology. So what was the idea? That these different terminologies of the Unani medicine should carry the same meaning in all the countries. So WHO has started this work, that how these terminologies can be standardized. So in the light of Arabic and Arabic books, in the light of some of the Persian books, majority of these 90% books are in Arabic origin, and also in some books in Urdu. We have gone through almost 4,000 terminologies, and on a particular template, we examine all the terminologies and what should be the meaning, what should be the use, what should be the all this. This document has given the detailed information in almost 4,000 terminologies, so that the meaning and sense of a particular term should be maintained equally in all the member states. All these three documents were sent to the experts of more than 100 countries. Then there was a meeting of the first and second document in New Delhi, in which experts from almost 14 countries personally examined this draft. Again, third time benchmark document was examined by about experts from the 14 countries in India, and now the benchmark document has almost been finalized and going to be published by the WHO. Training document is going to be published after one more revision, and terminology document has been sent to the experts of more than 100 countries, so that if there is any controversy, then they should send us, and we will again have the discussion and to discuss these things, so that the interpretation of these terminologies, translation of these terminologies should be maintained equally in all the 150 countries of the world.
So I can see that sounds like a really important piece of work. And it's in a kind of way, I suppose what we're doing is we're standardizing, aren't we, the practice of Unani medicine in terms of the terminology that are being used, in terms of how it's taught, as well as, like you said, you mentioned benchmarks. So that's a very interesting project, and we'll probably see a lot more written work on that as time goes on. I want to just focus on something more specific, and that is, now when I see my patients will come to me, and because I practice conventional medicine, they will come to me, and there's an expectation from them that any kind of illness that they expect some kind of pharmacological drug to be a sense of cure, to relieve their symptoms. So pharmacology plays a very important role in conventional medicine, but I believe it plays a very important role in Unani medicine as well. So Professor Yusuf Amin, you can tell us a bit about that. You can tell us about Unani pharmacological research and the benefits of that. Now, how maybe is there anything that could even benefit modern medical practice? Is there a difference between the pharmacology practice in Unani medicine relative to modern medicine? Can you enlighten us a bit more about that?
Yes, please. As I had submitted earlier, that Unani medicine, the basic pathophysiology of Unani medicine says that disease is produced because of a general imbalance, which we call misaj of the person or temperament of the person. every human being is made of a particular proportion of the 4 humors, and each humor is expresses 2 qualities. So ultimately, all human beings, they are composed of the 4 qualities: hot, cold, dry, and wet. And a particular proportion of these 4 qualities, they characterize the normal physiology of a person, normal physiological status of a person. Any disease is basically an imbalance in this general state of the patient. Either the hot increases or the cold increases or the dry increases or the wet increases abnormally, which is in excess of that person's normal temperament or normal mizaj. This is basic Unani pathophysiology. So it can be used for finding drugs for new diseases. For instance, if AIDS comes up, which is a new disease, then AIDS will be defined in terms of the mizaj imbalance. We can say that in AIDS, the cold increases. In AIDS, the quality of cold increases. So it can be treated by hot drugs. This is, of course, a very crude schematization which I'm presenting for the benefit of all types of persons who may not have a technical background in medicine and Unani medicine. So now it has to be found out by research whether this particular hot drug, as I had said, that hypothesization, all drugs are classified as hot or cold or dry or wet, but whether a particular hot drug will work in a particular cold disease is to be confirmed empirically. So if we take a hot drug and then we give it to patients of AIDS, then we have to see whether this particular hot drug works in AIDS or not. So now comes the very important point. Since Unani medicine is a holistic medicine in the sense that it considers the basic general imbalance to be the basis of a disease, on which the particular symptoms of a disease is based. And let me clarify that Unani medicine does not talk only of the general imbalance. It talks of specific symptoms also. It describes hundreds of diseases. So in every disease, first it will describe the general imbalance, whether the hot or cold has increased, and then it will give the alamat khususi also, the specific symptoms of that particular disease. So then the question arises that because it is a holistic medicine, it defines disease in terms, basically in terms of a general imbalance, then the empirical parameters have also to be holistic. This is a very important issue. And subjective clinical parameters, they are holistic parameters, such as the complexion of the person, the amount of fat in the person, the quality of the hair, whether they are curly or straight. These are the subjective clinical parameters which are holistic. So since Unani medicine focuses on the disease as a holistic phenomenon, which is based upon a general imbalance, therefore the empirical parameter has also to be holistic. So it's not like this because the microscope was not there in early times, or the ability to analyze the hormones was not there in the early times. That's why they relied only on the subjective clinical parameters. No, that's not the case. It is logically, there is a connection between a disease conceived holistically as a general imbalance and a parameter which is used, which is a subjective clinical parameter.
Right. Okay.
So coming to my subject, that is pharmacology. In pharmacology, in pharmacology, as you may be knowing, that we divide pharmacological actions into 2 types: physiological type of pharmacological actions like analgesic action or painkiller action, and molecular type of pharmacological actions like COX-2 selective inhibitors.
Right.
So that's how we can classify pharmacological actions. So from Unani point of view, it is the physiological type of pharmacological actions which are germane, which are relevant, rather than the molecular type of pharmacological actions. So in modern day research, in the clinical, if there is a new disease and we want to discover the Unani drug for that new disease, we will hypothesize on the basis of hot, cold, dry, and wet. And then we will test it in the case of clinical studies, mainly by subjective clinical parameters. And in the case of animals, animal experiments, mainly by physiological type of pharmacological actions rather than molecular type of pharmacological actions. So in pharmacology, in vivo experiments, experiments involving whole animals are more relevant to Unani medicine, whereas as all of us know, in Western medicine, it is the molecular test systems like high throughput screening, etc., which are more relevant. But in Unani medicine, the in vivo experiments will be more useful for defining which is the Unani drug for a new type of disease.
Okay, so that's quite complicated.
May I add one more point, just in a minute or so?
The thing is, I don't want to be left in a situation where we don't get the audience to ask questions. So we'll come back to them, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to talk about some of these.
Okay, fine.
This is addressing the audience as well, that this is just an introduction to the whole concept of Unani medicine. I know there's a number of questions that are coming through, but you'll have a plenty of opportunity to talk to our experts when they deliver these sessions. So inshallah, Professor Amin, please do hold that. Inshallah, you'll have plenty of opportunity to tell us all about that in your sessions, inshallah. But we're trying to just skim the periphery of the subject, and then the detail can come later, inshallah, in our sessions. So Dr. Saifi, you know, one thing that I get quite a lot of, and a lot of us hear about this, is individuals, they go for Unani medicine or other types of naturopathic sort of approaches to medicine because they say that it's Islamic. So is Unani medicine Islamic? I'll use Islamic with inverted commas.
I think my seniors can throw light on this better than me. But what I understand is that I think when we say something Islamic, it comes with a lot of responsibility.
Yes, it is.
And these are all, you know, the human beings made stuff, you know, and of course they worked hard on that. And it has a Unani system of medicine has, I guess, longest history of medication.
I suppose is it being informed by Islamic literature? I suppose that's probably another way of.
Yeah, we can say it is the medicine which is closest to Muslim and Islam, you know, right. And also because of the involvement of the Muslim scholars, and Muslim scholars really took over it because of Rasulullah's hadith, more or less to the meaning that Allah did not descend any disease, but send a cure with that. So there was a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot of, you know, Muslim scholars came up. They did hard work. You know, we have like a whole, you know, the list of people. So
things like black seed and cupping and hijama and all these sort of processes.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of emphasis on health and cleanliness came from Rasulullah and, you know, on. So yeah, Muslim took over. Muslim participated in. And it is, culturally, it is more close to Islamic teachings and a Muslim lifestyle. So yes, it does. But I can't say it is 100% Islamic.
And how do you think, for somebody who's sort of worked in different areas, how would somebody who's come from a Western conventional medical sort of background, but because we've got a lot of people on Balagh Academy who have been trained in the Western world, and they've clearly well, in fact, it's not even the Western world, the Eastern world as well, all over the world, but they're being trained in Western medicine. Okay, that's one way of calling it, or conventional medicine, or orthodox medicine. Now, how can they benefit? Because we've got a lot of people here, even on this as our audience today. How would you advise them? How could they benefit? And I'll give you our example of why Balagh Academy has chosen to have this particular course, and that is to make us to think out of the box, because sometimes we can be very materialistic, very physicalist, reductionist in our approach to the idea of soul, mind, and body. Sometimes we don't address the issue of soul in we don't address this issue of soul in Western medicine. We just talk about psychology and psychiatry. What can we offer these individuals from Unani medicine or naturopathic medicine? How can they learn something which will make them think out of the box?
I guess there's a good thing is that these days there's a trend of integrative medicine.
Okay.
And even in America, you know, when I was doing my MD, I had few MDs who were doing MD. Okay. So there's a trend that the conventional doctors, physicians, they are now, you know, studying and taking interest, because they're seeing there's a growing interest of the public. And a lot of people these days, a lot of people, they are, using herbs, vitamins, nutrients, reading about lifestyle changes, and they are seeing the benefits. So they have a lot of questions to conventional doctors, and they put forth like, what, can I take this herb if I'm taking this particular medicine? And doctors, if they are not trained in these things, they don't know anything about it. It's like a blank face. So I guess there's a really need these days in particular, more than ever before, that conventional doctors get trained in particularly Unani system of medicine, because it encompasses a lot of other modalities with this.
Well, we're very, very heavily regulated, aren't we? And pharmaceutical companies and their drugs that they produce sort of fit hand in hand with the way we practice our medicine. So there's a lot of influence on a number of different fronts in terms of how we practice it. Okay, so let me just ask some generic questions. Now, I'm going to ask our panelists to be succinct, to the point in your response, because we've got a lot of questions here. So if you can sort of give us a response to the point, inshallah, in some of these questions. So one of the questions is regarding, number one, is about herbs used in Unani medicine. Are they readily available? Professor Amin, are these herbal herbs, are they special? Can you only get them from some parts of the world? Are they something that's available everywhere around the world?
I can speak for my country, India.
Okay.
In India, throughout this country, the basic ingredients of Unani drugs, which are particular types of plants and herbs, they are available. And the reason is that these drugs, which are used in Unani and Ayurveda, they are quite common. So most of the drugs, they are processed differently, they are conceived differently, they are related to diseases by a different scheme. So all that is there, that difference is there. But the basic plants which are used, most of them are common between Ayurveda and the Unani medicine. So at least in my country, these plants are available throughout the country. They can be used by the pharmacists to make Unani drugs.
So me as a practitioner in, let's say I was a Unani practitioner in the UK, would I be able to easily get hold of them? Do you know about? Was that something that's easily accessible, available? Shall we ask Dr. Saifi? Yeah, Dr. Saifi, you can address that.
For example, all the herbs that we study or we practice in Unani medicine, they are available in Western countries, including UK, but with different names. They're all the same.
Well, while we're on the topic,
just one more thing. I'm sorry, but however, the compound formulations, the formulatory the combinations may not be really available everywhere.
Right. Okay.
But the good thing is these days you can order on internet. Right. So it's easily accessible.
We live in a global world now, so things are available, aren't they, from all over the world? What's the difference between naturopathic and homeopathic then, Dr. Saifi? You practice naturopathic medicine. Is there a difference between what you do and a homeopathic doctor does?
Yes, I mean, because naturopathic medicine is an umbrella degree program where you practice homeopathy also. So homeopathy is a part of naturopathic medicine. However, if you want to be a full-blown homeopath, then you just go to homeopathic school. But in the United States, I don't think there's any degree program for just homeopathy. So there's naturopathic medicine, which is fully accredited program, and in which they also teach homeopathy, and a person who did naturopathic medicine can practice homeopathy also as a part of that naturopathic medicine.
So I'm going to go back to the same question because it's a repeated question we're getting from some of our individuals. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give opportunity for some of our people who have come onto this session to actually come online and speak as well and ask some of our panelists some questions. So if any of you want to do that, if you just raise your hand, inshallah, and I'll allow one or two of you to speak. Before I do that, I'll just mention one question and then inshallah I'll let one of you on. Okay, so there's a question here regarding philosophies of different types of approaches to medicine. And I think we've already recognized that, Western medicine does follow a particular philosophy. We've signed up to a particular philosophy in terms of which is more reductionist in terms of how we practice Western medicine. Whereas when you're looking at Unani medicine naturopathic medicine, then we're looking at the concept of humors and temperaments, and it's a different sort of approach to the body, and it looks at it from a more holistic perspective rather than a more sort of a biological related to cellular or microbiology. Now, I've got a sort of generic question here, and I suppose it's more about the course that we're going to be delivering. Now, Professor Jamil, if you were to bring, because you're somebody who's designing, sort of a whole program around what kind of things should be brought to those people who are interested in training in this area. So we've got somebody who's asking the question, how easy is it for me to start practicing Unani medicine in the Western world? I know it's something that's practiced quite a lot in the sort of in India, Pakistan, and various other countries around there. How easy is it to practice that? And if you're going to formulate some kind of standards in terms of training and terminologies, what kind of advice would you give somebody like that who's really interested in this area and they want to open up a clinic in the Western world? What kind of advice would you give?
As far as the popularity of the Unani medicine in Western world or other than Indian subcontinent is concerned, obviously, first the creation of the awareness is the first point.
Yeah.
Just like this webinar is going on, and just like you are going to launch a short course on Unani medicine, these type of programs will create awareness. That is number one. Then obviously the question comes the education of the Unani medicine. Alhamdulillah, in UAE also is planning to open some Unani institution in United Arab Emirates. So, and third, and that is more important, that is practice. Actually, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
These webinars, again I am coming to the first point, these webinars and creation and these short-term courses and this type of program will create the awareness regarding the Unani medicines, its efficacy, its safety. Then people will come for treatment. First patient being created. First patient, then education. So for example, if there are some patients in any European country, then they will ask, now the online treatment or telepathy is coming up as a strong profession. So then the patient will contact to the physicians, to the doctors like Dr. Saifi, and this is the awareness. Then patients, after the awareness, will come to the doctors. Then question of the drugs will come, whether the drugs are available or not. Then drugs will be made available. If not available, then obviously questions, why only Dr. Saifi? Why not so many thousands other people? Then a question will come that we should open the institutions. So inshallah, this will be a chain. But a creation of the awareness, this is the first point. Then treatment, then education students, then obviously come research, my side. Practice is first, research is afterwards.
Okay. Now, I'm I'll come to Dr. Saifi in a second, but I'm just being conscious of some of the questions we're going to ask here. This webinar is not a clinic, so we're not trying to address people's disease conditions and address what kind of treatment they should be seeking. So please make your questions relevant in terms of the course and some of the generic questions related to the sciences, rather than asking specific questions related to your illness. Now, Dr. Saifi, did you want to say something in response to that question?
I just wanted to respond to the first question about licensing practicing in Western world. Since there is no regulation board of Unani system of medicine in North America and UK or Europe, there's a room for that to practice. Because if there's a regulatory body, then we need to go through that. But there is a health freedom law, for example, in North America. So if you want to practice some medicine or some medical or healthcare practice, which is culture-based or religious-based, you can practice. You are allowed to practice. And actually, there's in United States, there's a pastoral medical association, a licensing board also. So you can get, a license from them and you can practice your cultural medicine. So, for example, you see these days a lot of Unani practitioners and Ayurvedic practitioners in the Western part of the world, and there's no board for Ayurveda, but they are practicing it. And there's no board for Unani, and they are practicing it just because there is no particular regulatory board for that. So, but you are allowed to practice. But it's you can't claim and you can't diagnose and you can't use the word cure. Okay. But yes, you can practice it as you would want to support the body, and it's considered as an healing art, and you can do that. Yes.
Okay. Now we're going to allow one or two individuals to talk online. So I've got Zahid Safraz. I think we had somebody else before, but Zahid Safraz, do you want to say something? I'm going to allow you to talk, inshallah, if you can come online. If there's anybody else who wants to say anything, please do raise your hand, inshallah, and we'll try to get you on board as well. So Zahid Safraz. Okay, I'm going to give you a very close opportunity. If you don't speak, then I'm going to have to move on to the next person. Okay, right. So Saman Anis, we're going to allow you to talk. Just 1 second. Let me just get you on board.
Hello.
Okay. Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Is Zahid here?
Zahid Safraz. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask the panelists, Assalamu alaikum, if there are any, medicine for, mental health conditions.
So that's open to any of you. Anybody who's got experience of that, I suppose.
Yeah, if there was any in Unani that would, help with.
So are there any particular treatments that you have that deal specifically with mental health issues?
Yeah.
So Professor Amin?
Yes, I'd like to respond to this question.
Yeah.
Unani medicine, in the pathophysiology of Unani medicine, man is supposed to be made of not only the body, but also the subtle substance. So this is a big advantage for Unani medicine, that they can have a vision of mind, they can have the vision of a substance of mind. So just as the body, in the body, disease is due to increase of hot or cold and dry and wet, in the same way, the diseases of the mind or psychiatric diseases, they are also due to the increase of heat or cold in the subtle substance of man, which is called pneuma in English, and ruh or arwah in the Arabic terminology. So this is a tremendous advantage which Unani medicine has, which even Ayurveda does not have. In Ayurveda also there is no concept of a substance of mind, but in Unani medicine there is a basis of a substance of mind which is subtle. So if a person's, for instance, if a person is having black spots in his skin, this indicates that black bile is increasing. Now this increase in black bile, this will give rise to many bodily ailments also, and it can give rise to many mental ailments also. So a drug which is contrary to black bile, the quality of black bile is cold and dry. So a drug which is hot and wet would be useful in diseases due to increase in black bile. This increase in black bile, if it is in body, it will be a bodily disease like hyperacidity. And if this black bile is increased in the mind, then it will give rise to a mental disease such as depression. So a hot and wet drug would be useful in depression. So in this way, Unani medicine has got a tremendous power for treating mental diseases, because it conceives the mind as a substance which whose states are determined by the same four qualities which determine the state of a body. So the imbalances behind a mental disease can be easily corrected by Unani medicine by giving a drug of the opposite temperament, opposite quality, opposite mizaj, not only a drug, but even manipulating the environmental factors having an opposite quality. For instance, if a person is having depression, so it means the cold is increasing, so he should be put in bright light. Bright light also has got heat. So it is not only drugs which are hot and wet, which would be useful in depression, rather keeping the person in.
I mean, I think what we'll have to do is we'll have to just shorten that. There's going to be a lot more discussion of this in the course. We don't want to give you all the treasures now. So inshallah, if you join the course, then we'll have plenty.
The only point which I want to repeat is that because it has got the concept of substance of mind, so it can use many factors as interventions for treating mental diseases, and it is quite successful with it. I'm
going to move on to Saman Anis. I hope I'm saying the name properly. If you want to just ask your question, we'll try to just get it one panelist at a time. I think because otherwise we're not going to get as many people to talk. Saman Anis, please come on quickly because we're going to have to move on to the next person otherwise. Just 1 second. It's my fault because you're not coming through. 1 sec.
May I add one thing? Only one sentence.
You go ahead while we're waiting.
For the mental health, it is the Unani medicine. I think that it is the only Unani medicine which has both preventive regimens as well as the curative regimens. Asbab-e sitta zaruriya, and particularly in Asbab-e sitta zaruriya, harkat sukoon nafsani. This is the important factor of the 6 essential factors that is known as Asbab-e sitta zaruriya, that's for mental health. This is to prevent the mental disease. Now, as for cure the mental disease, there are so many single and compound drugs, and Unani medicine is known for the treatment of the mental problems. And in after day-to-day practice, so many patients of the depression came from the leading institution of modern medicine, and they are for example, for months and years they are taking allopathic medicine, and ultimately they come to the Unani medicine because for the Unani muqawwiyat-e-dimagh. So Unani medicine has both and very good approach for the prevention of the mental disease and treatment of the mental disease.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Dr. Professor Jamil. Alia Umar, we've got you unmuted, so you can talk to us. Do you want to ask a question?
Assalamu alaikum. So I just wanted to ask about the role of Unani medicine as a complementary therapy to, for example, obstetrics and gynecology, which is what I practice. So I'm interested in kind of the role of hijama, and has any of the panelists, for instance, had to treat or successfully treated certain gynecological problems with Unani medicine?
Okay, Dr. Saifi, somebody who practices cupping, is there some scope for that?
Yes, I personally am not practicing. I'm not seeing female patients. I'm doing cupping, however, and I know that there are a lot of points which can be considered for different gynecological problems, and they are quite successful in complementing, the other medications for gynecology which are used. There are, I'm writing a book actually on it, but you can go and browse. There are some charts which describe different points for different gynecological problems on internet, and there are so many books actually have been written on it, and they are available on Amazon also, quite in detail actually. So yes, there are so many points which can help to relieve gynecological conditions.
I suppose quite important thing to note here is that even though in Western medicine we sort of divide topics because they become so huge into different specialities like gynecology and obstetrics and orthopedics and neurology and things like that. So it's not the same when it comes to Unani medicine. It's much more holistic, isn't it? It's not, you're not going to divide it into a separate sort of speciality in itself, I suppose. So when we approach Unani medicine from that perspective, even though we're talking about gynecological issues, reality what's important is what is the condition, what is your condition, rather than what speciality you're coming under. Okay, so I suppose looking at the difference between conventional practice medicine in medical practice, as well as Unani medicine, when it looks at the soul, mind, and body, the holistic approach, maybe I can ask one of the panelists to address that question. What is it that makes Unani medicine quite unique in the soul, mind, body sort of approach, rather than the way we have the medicine we practice today? May I again step in? Yeah, of course.
Unani medicine looks at man as basically made up of 3 parts: a physical level, a subtle level, and a spiritual level. So it is the physical level and subtle level which Unani medicine takes in its area. As I had just said, that Unani medicine has got a concept of a subtle substance. So it is able to relate all physical things described by the four qualities with the subtle level of man, which are also described in terms of the four qualities. So this is the first distinction of Unani medicine, that it has got a concept of subtle substance. And so it is able to relate all physical things, whether they are drugs or environmental factors or lifestyle matters. It can relate them by the means of qualities with the subtle state. Then it also recognizes the spiritual level of man, but it does not take it into its purview. In a way, it leaves it for the religious leaders and for the Sufia to intervene at the spiritual level. But it does talk of the spiritual level of man by saying that the spirit of man, the ruh of man, which is called nafse natiqa in Unani medicine, that nafse natiqa relates to the subtle level of man, which is called ruh in Unani medicine. And then that subtle level is linked with the body or the physical level. So in this way, Unani medicine clearly has got a place for ruh, spirit, which it calls nafse natiqa, which is linked to the subtle level, and then the subtle level is linked to the physical level. But Unani medicine limits itself to the subtle level and the physical level, and it leaves the spiritual interventions to religious people and Sufia. But usually the physicians, the Unani physicians and Hakims, they are at the same time religious people, they are practicing Sufia. So in that way, they can intervene at the spiritual level, but not qua Unani physicians, qua Sufia and religious leaders, because they usually unite these two functions in their personality.
Okay, so we're going to have one more question, and then what we'll do, we'll have to close it up. And what I'm going to do then is just explain the course just broadly for our viewers. So I'm just going to ask Rifat Mahbub. Rifat Mahbub, if you're online, you can talk.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
My question is, I'm a medical student in Bangladesh. Throughout our medical college life in community medicine, we have been taught that through the 500 to 1500 AD, this 1000 period of middle age medicine, it is a dark age of medicine. Muslim Arabs just borrowed from Greeks and Romans some techniques of medicines, just developed as Unani system of medicine. So it was a backdated, and after revival had occurred through the theory of contagion, and when germ theory came, we have to came to know about microbes, and we have specific treatment. So this source of conception has been given in every system in community medicine. So what is your opinion about regarding this?
Okay,
And they also,
okay, can I just rephrase that question slightly to encompass some of the other questions that some of our panelists, some of our attendees are asking? And it's a very good question, and I'm going to just add to that question, and then I'm going to put it to the panelists. So the question here is, if you look at the history of Unani medicine, then clearly we recognize that there are certain cultures that medicine has come from. So then it was taken up by the Arab world and various other parts around the world. And then I suppose you could argue the point that it was Islamicized to some degree in the Muslim world, because at that time medical practice was quite a fond subject. It grew humongously during the golden age of Islam. So there was an element of Islamicizing the idea of Unani or Greek. Unani means Greek, so Greek sort of practice of medicine. So Galenic and various other approaches. Now, some of the questions that some of our attendees are asking is in terms of the different cultures that play into this. Is there some element of Chinese medicine practice in this? Is there some element of, we're clearly recognizing there's some Greek medicine practice in this. We have a mixture of different cultures coming together. Is Unani medicine a representation of global cultures, or is it quite unique to one group of people or one particular way of practicing? I know it's quite a blurred question. Can anybody answer that and sort of refine that a bit, because we've got to.
May I respond to this question?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Unani medicine definitely has a global character. Simply, there are contributions from the Arabs. There are contributions from the Europeans, like Abul Qasim Zahrawi. He was from Spain. There are contributions from the Central Asians, like the Ibn Sina. And there are contributions from the Persia, like Razi. There are contributions from the Indians, like so many contributions, Hakim Azam Khan, Hakim Ajmal Khan. So Unani medicine has a global. In fact, one more wrong notion has been given. What that medical student just made the question, that Unani medicine has been taken from the Greek. Definitely, they were very honest person, and they keep the reference, and they have given the reference honestly. But this is not the medicine which has been taken from the Greek, Yunan. Arabs are not only the translators, but they are basically contributors. This is one thing. Second important thing, that this word Unani is only 200 years old. Basically, this is medicine. This is tib. This is tib. That was have a journey from the Asia, from the Europe, from the Central Asia, from the Persia, and finally it has been settled down in Indian subcontinent, and globally definitely India is the world leader in Unani medicine nowadays. But the contribution all over, this is basically the medicine, basically the tip. In India 200 years back, to differentiate it from the Ayurvedic, the name Unani was given. But now WHO has recognized this system of medicine that is basically global tib. I am giving this name, global medicine, that is global medicine. WHO has recognized this medicine with the name of Unani medicine. So now we are bound to call it as Unani medicine. Otherwise, it's not only a Unani medicine, this is a misnomer, this is a global medicine.
So I suppose we don't just go by the name using Unani, but just like we talk about conventional medicine or Western medicine, it's been a contribution from many different world countries and scientists all over the world. Similarly, Unani medicine is a lot older, actually, a lot older in terms of the tradition than the conventional medicine that we practice today. And just like any other form of practice, you have contributions from many different cultures that contribute to the science and grow the science, develop the science more as time goes on. So yeah, there's a wealth of history to be learned when we practice Unani medicine. It's not just something that we just learned over the last couple of 100 years in terms of the kind of medicine we practice today. Now, I'm going to have to finish on that note. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to briefly talk about the course. And before I do that, I really want to thank our panelists for their contribution. Alhamdulillah, we've got a fantastic panel. Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah that we've have this opportunity to have such experts. We've got individuals who have specialist interests within this science. It's not just just generally, but they've got very deep, long experiences of many decades and specific interests. They are contributing to this science globally, and that's what makes our panelists really special, is that they are actually contributing to the growth of this science. These are individuals that you're going to see their names being mentioned in many years to come, inshallah, in terms of their contributions. So, we have to really, take off our hat to them, or take off my turban to them, and thank them for, taking their valuable time out, and really contributing to this amazing science of Unani medicine that's been practiced for years and years, much more so than, the conventional medicine that we practice today. Now, so Jazakumullah khair, and inshallah we'll see a lot more of you all in the delivery of our course. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to highlight some elements to the course. Now, just before I go into the details of this course, recognizing also that we also have a course on ahadith of medicine. So the course of ahadith of medicine is delivered by a number of ulama, where we actually go through the abwab, the chapters of tib, as well as of Kitab al-Marda or Kitab al-Tib. So the book on medicine and the book of patients. And in there, we do go into quite a lot of detail about the prophetic tradition, ahadith, related to some of those questions that you people are raising in this session. So there will be a lot of mention of that in that course, and also there will be considerable amount of this on a practical level that will be discussed in this course on Introduction to Unani Medicine. So recognizing this is only level 1, this is just an introduction, this is a huge science. We've got experts to deliver on this science, but some of the things that we'll be talking about in this course, I'll just outline. So there'll be a basic introduction about maybe some of the terminologies, also the objectives of the course and the teaching method. So this is more a practical, the first session will be more about how the students can engage with the course. The second part will be an introduction to Unani medicine in itself. So some of the historical evolution issues around how contributions of Muslim scholars to this field, how it became Islamicized in certain ways, if that's the term that we can use. Also the infrastructure and the network of Unani system of medicine worldwide, how this science grew historically. Then there's something about the fundamentals of Unani medicine. Now, the speakers, some of our panelists have had been really put in a deep end in terms of some of the questions we put to them. Because if you sit down with one of them, they will tell you the whole philosophy of a science that is vast and it's very detailed, that leads to an understanding of the soul, the body, and the mind. Now, for them to then answer a specific question and try to bring all that in to address one simple question, can be sometimes you can't really say that that is a holistic response, but rather, if you really want to get to know some of the detailed responses, you need to join this course and you need to come and listen to them. Some of our speakers talk about some of the issues related, especially around the fundamentals of Unani medicine and the philosophies that underlie it. Then there's something about the 7 natural factors. We'll be talking about the Umur Tabiya, okay? And then there'll be disease, diagnosis, treatment, Unani medicine. So we'll talk specifically. There's quite a lot of questions that many of you asked regarding treatments for diabetes, treatments for cancer and various other illnesses. So hopefully, inshallah, there'll be some kind of response to that in this 5th session on disease diagnosis in Unani medicine. Then there's something about preventative and promotive healthcare, some of the holistic approaches that we have. There's something about the 6 essential factors, lifestyle management, all those kind of things will be discussed in this session as well. And the 7th will be something about therapeutics, some more therapeutic regimens, the regimental therapy, some of the other discussions. There were questions about how cupping can be used for certain illnesses, leeching, vivisection, even things like, for example, Turkish baths and things like all this is, like I said, a very holistic approach to treatment and healing. Then there'll be a session on therapeutic approaches to Unani medicine part 2, which is about some of the other approaches that we're not very familiar with, such as dietotherapy and also concoctive and purgative therapy. So there'll be a lot of discussion around that. And then also something about the pharmacokinetics in terms of the drugs or the pharmacology. So principles of drug action, the temperaments and how that relates to this. Some of our panelists talk about this earlier on. And also this will be clearly going on for 2 sessions on the different types of drugs that are used. And then Unani medicine versus modern medicine. So there'll be a comparative analysis. There's quite a bit of a discussion about that. There was a number of questions that were addressed related to the differences. And we talked about evidence-based medicine and how that relates in both those 2 different sciences. So, and also there was a lot of questions about career in terms of where can we practice this? How can we learn this science if I live here? So there'll be something about the career in Unani medicine. So there'll be a lot of discourse on that. So inshallah, I apologize if we were not able to address all your questions. So clearly there's quite a lot of questions. There's a clear demand for this subject to be taught. So alhamdulillah, we've had the opportunity to get this course in its form to be delivered by world experts in this particular area. So inshallah, if you want to learn more, then I highly recommend you join this course, inshallah, and then you will gain the details and you'll have the opportunity to interact with some of our panelists today and learn a lot more detail, having understood the basics and the fundamentals which are essential for you to be able to ask the appropriate questions. So on that note, inshallah, again, I'd like to thank our panelists for their contribution. It's been, quite a webinar. Jazakumullah khair. And also for our attendees, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to be able to grasp the essence of such a science and its roots right into the Islamic world, and for us to be given the opportunity to learn of the science and inshallah to bring this into practice, and also to start seeing, for those of us who are from the Western medicine sort of perspective, let's open up our mind, let's think more broadly, recognize that there are certain philosophies between any kind of practice, and there's no harm in us learning other ways and approaches to medicine and healing, and the only thing that we're going to get from that is beneficial sort of knowledge. So you can take and leave what you want, and then move from that, and in some of you may even gain a massive interest in this area and even decide to make a career out of it. So this is a good stepping stone to sort of getting onto that ladder. So we'll leave it there, inshallah, and hopefully it's been very useful for you all. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.